Let's get this board meeting on a roll. Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Yen Tu, and I am pleased to be here and have a board meeting, full board meeting started right now. Welcome to our January 23rd. No, not today's not January 23rd. Today is March 2025 CBA board meeting. And where's Bruce? There you are. Welcome. But I'm going to introduce you in a few more seconds. But keep that in mind. Keep that smile going. The CBAs provide the opportunity for the public to participate via WebEx platform. When we make public comment, we will begin by taking public comment for those who are in attendance of the meeting in Sacramento location first. I would then ask the moderator to open up to the WebEx public comment online. You'll be allotted up to 5 minutes for public comment. Ms. Reed, could you call the roll, please?
Doug Aguilar,
Present.
Patricia Batchelor,
Here.
Nancy Corrigan,
Nancy Corrigan, present.
Nancy Dong,
Present.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Present.
Christian Lotta,
Present.
Tony Lynn,
Present.
Bruce Rafel,
Here.
Joe Rosenbaum,
Here.
Teresa Thompson,
Here.
Yen Tu,
Here.
and Evangeline Ward.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Now I would like to read the mission statement for the record. The CBA's mission is to protect consumer by ensuring only qualified licensor practice public accountancy in accordance with the established professional standards. This mission is derived from the statutory requirement that the protection of the public shall be the highest priority of the California Board of Accountancy in exercising its licensing, regulatory, and disciplinary functions. Whenever the protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. All right, now we go to our agenda item. Public comment for item not on the agenda. Anybody from our board first? Anybody from the Sacramento location? Seeing none. Moving on to WebEx. Do we have anybody from WebEx participating?
There are no members of the public via WebEx.
Okay, so from now on, I'm going to stop asking for WebEx unless our moderator let me know that there is public participation. Thank you for that. All right, next item on the agenda is number 2, report from the president. That would be me. Now we're going to have a chance to welcome Mr. Bruce Rafel. Mr. Rafel is appointed by the Senate Rules Committee on January 29th. Mr. Rafel is a certified real estate appraiser based in Marin County and has been in business for 33 years. He was elected to the San Rafael School Board in 1991 and 1995 and served a year as the chair of the Marin County School Board Association. Mr. Rafel was elected to the Marin County Democratic Central Committee in 2024 and has been a member of the Democratic State Central Committee since 2013. He also served 3 terms on the Marin County Park and Open Space Commission and a term on the San Francisco Juvenile Delinquency Prevention Commission. Mr. Rafel and his wife has 2 sons and 4 fabulous grandchildren. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Bruce Rafel to the California Board of Accountancy. Welcome. Would you have an opportunity to say a few words if you like?
No, you read it exactly as I wrote it. Very well done. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
How many girls and how many boys of your
Three
grandchildren?
girls live in Novato, who I see frequently, and I have a grandson in the state of Maryland. I
Nice.
see a lot, so I'm just looking forward to participating and lending a public a voice and
Lens.
a view on with this board. I'm very excited about being here.
Yes, indeed. Thank you again for joining us on our board. Any public comment from Sacramento? Seeing none, we'll move on to our next item on the board, on the agenda, which is item 2B, resolution for the retirement of Dan Jacobson from the California Board of Accountancy. Do I read the whole? All right. First and foremost, this resolution is for the retirement of California Board of Accountancy member Dan Jacobson. Whereas Dan Jacobson, Esquire, was appointed to by the Speaker of the Assembly, Anthony Brandon, and has faithfully served as a member of the California Board of Accountancy from September 1st, 2017 through January 23rd, 2025. And whereas he has served as chair and member of the Committee on Professional Conduct, chair and member of the Legislative Committee, member of the Enforcement Program Oversight Committee, and of course, CBA's member liaison to the Peer Review Oversight Committee. And whereas he has served on the Board of Governors of the California Insurance Guarantee Association as a temporary judge for the Orange County Superior Court, Mr. Jacobson was an adjunct professor at the Law of Pacific West College of Law, the author of numerous scholarly articles, an expert witness consultant in the field of property casualty insurance, and previously served as chair of the Democratic Foundation of Orange County. And whereas Dan Jacobson has practiced litigation law in California since 1988, and whereas throughout his term of service, at all time, Dan Jacobson gave fully of himself and his ideas and act thoughtfully and consciously, although always with the public interest and welfare in mind. And whereas his colleagues wish him to express to him their highest esteem and regard, now therefore it has been be it resolved that the member of the California Board of Accountancy express heartfelt appreciation to Dan Jacobson for the outstanding contribution he made during his term of service on the California Board of Accountancy and the Consumer of California. Can I see a motion from the board to pass this resolution? Mr. Joe
I would make that motion.
Rosenbaum. And do I see a motion for second, Nancy Corrigan?
Yes, I will second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any comment or question from the board? Any comment from the public at Sacramento? Seeing none. Ms. Reed, would you like to take a roll for the motion?
Doug Aguilera, Patricia Batchelor,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Nancy Dong,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
Christian Lauda,
Yes.
Tony Lynn, Bruce Rayful,
Yes.
Joe Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Teresa Thompson,
Yes.
Yen Tu, and Evangeline Ward.
Yes.
The motion carries.
You, Ms. Reed. We're moving right along. You guys, if you need to say anything, go ahead, I know people want to go to lunch probably. All right, so our next item, I had a very good breakfast this morning, so I'm good today. So if you guys want me to power on, not just kidding, I wouldn't do that to you. All right, so the next item is 2C to 2C to 2E. We're going to take these resolution at the same time. The first one, 2C, is Resolution Retirement Enforcement Advisory Committee member David Carr, and D is resolution of retirement for peer review oversight committee member Sharon Sholak, CPA. And 2E is resolution retirement qualifications committee member Angela Hozek, CPA. We would like to get a motion for this. Yes, Ms. Hine.
So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you very much. Any comment from the board? Question? Seeing none. Sacramento, anybody from Sacramento? Seeing none. Now, we can now take a roll for the motion. Oh, I asked for public comment already. Seeing none from Sacramento.
Evangeline Ward,
Yes.
Yin Tu, Teresa Thompson,
Yes.
Joe Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Bruce Rayful,
Yes.
Tony Lynn, Christian Lotta,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines, Nancy Dong,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Patricia Batchelor,
Yes.
and Doug Aguilera.
Yes.
The motion carries.
You, Ms. Reed, that was very efficient. We're going on to agenda item 2F, which provide members with information regarding opportunity to participate on committees with the National Association of State Board of Accountancy. NASPA announced that those who are interested in serving on a committee for 2025 to 2026 shall complete the online committee interest form no later by May 9th, 2025. An overview of the time commitment for participation on NASPA's committee is provided in the attachment. BCA, Office of Professional Examination Services reviewed the NASPA's 2025-26 committee charges and time requirements and believe any member serving on the CPA Examination Review Board or Examination Administration Committee would create a conflict of interest. So basically, don't pick those committees. Please note that any CPA member that are currently serving on NASPA committee for 2024 and 25 committee years would like to continue serving on this committee will need to reapply for the new committee year. If you do not reapply, the NASPA will assume that you no longer wish to serve. To ensure that staff track CPA's member interest, please email Ms. Reed when you submit an interest form and provide the committee you are seeking appointment to. If you have any question regarding NASPA's committee, please contact Ms. Reed. Any question from the board? Seeing none. Sacramento, anybody from the public? Seeing none. Ms. Reed, we don't need to have a motion, so you're good. That item is done. All right, moving on to our next item, 2H, discussion and approval of the California Board of Accountancy Strategic Plan. Ms. Pierce, I'm sorry. 2G. Ms. Reed, I see, I was way ahead of myself. You didn't, yeah. Well, if we keep having one-day meeting, I think everybody will vote next one for yes. All right. 2G, Ms. Reed will talk about the proposed 2026 meeting dates.
This item provides members with a list of the proposed 2026 CBA meeting dates. CBA staff have selected the dates to avoid major and religious holidays. Staff have also selected dates to try and avoid spring and fall breaks for colleges and universities to increase outreach options in conjunction with CBA meetings. The CBA may choose to make a motion to adopt or modify the proposed meeting dates. And at this time, I would like to turn it back over to President Tu to request a motion.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Reed. Anybody have a question? Motion, Ms. Latta?
I move to adopt the proposed 2026 CBA meeting dates.
All right. Do I see a Ms. Thompson? Not Ms. Thompson, Bachelor. Yeah, thank you for the second. Any other discussion? Seeing none. Anybody from the public in Sacramento location? Seeing none. Ms. Reed, can you call the roll?
All right, Doug Aguilera. Patricia Batchelor.
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan.
Yes.
Nancy Dong.
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines. Christian Lotta.
Yes.
Tony Lynn.
Yes.
Bruce Rayful.
Yes.
Joe Rosenbaum.
Yes.
Teresa Thompson.
Yes.
Yen Tu. And Evangeline Ward.
Yes.
And the motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Now we have the dates. All right, now we go back to the item 2H. Ms. Pierce will talk about the California Board of Accountancy Strategic Plan.
Perfect. Thank you so much. As members may recall, the CBA held its strategic planning workshop at the November meeting. During the workshop, members provided feedback on priorities and discussed possible objectives for inclusion in the new strategic plan. Following that meeting, staff used the information shared by members to develop objectives, which are now reflected in the draft plan before you. CBA leadership had an opportunity to review the draft, and their feedback was they believe they thought it was reflective of the discussion and ideas shared during the workshop. I'd like to provide an overview of the draft plan, and with President Tu's approval, I'll take a brief pause after each section and ask if members have questions or edits or feedback, and then the motion at the very end of my presentation. So starting on page 5, there were no suggested changes to the mission or vision statements. However, there was a recommendation on the values. On the transparency value, the phrase, "and be receptive to new ideas," was removed and added to the initiative value, which now reads, "The CBA will encourage creatively looking at problems and processes, actively seeking solutions and improvements, and being receptive to new ideas." On the diversity, equity, and inclusion value, the wording "that benefit its operations to meet its consumer protection mission" was removed, and the value now reads, "The CBA supports and encourages a variety of perspectives, backgrounds, and experiences." Are there any comments or feedback regarding these proposed changes?
Yes, Ms. Hine.
Can you just, I'm sorry, go back, like point us back to the section? Are you looking at the portion that's the draft? Or are you in the section that's the proposed draft? Like there's 2 drafts in there.
Yeah, so the first draft is the second draft is really the designed version,
Mm-hmm.
but they contain consistent language.
Okay.
Yeah,
So just point back to where you did the comments that you just made.
sure. Page 5. Under the values section. And the first change would be to the 4th bullet, the transparency value. The wording "and be receptive to new ideas" was removed. And that particular wording was relocated to the initiative value, which is the 5th bullet. And then the diversity, equity, inclusion, which is the 6th bullet. The wording "that benefit its operation to meet its consumer protection mandate" was removed and stricken from that value. Okay. I will move on then. Okay.
Please.
So enforcement on page 6, there were no changes to the goal definition. The objectives added to this goal focus on addressing unlicensed practice, expanding the use of the Enforcement Advisory Committee, and working to reduce recurring violations. Are there any comments regarding the objectives under the enforcement goal?
Yes, Ms. Hine.
I had a question that really relates more so to all of the goals. How is the prioritization of the goals determined, like the order? Was it, and I have to, apologize because I wasn't in the strategic planning discussion, so I don't have the benefit of having experienced it in, real time. But is the list a prioritized list, or is it like, how is it determined that the goals would be numbered in the order that they were numbered?
I think I can say there was no, these aren't in a priority order. They're just listed and numbered.
Thank you for referring to the page. That helps when you were looking for it.
Yep. Okay, I will move on to page 7, licensing. So there were no changes to the goal definition. The objectives added to this goal focus on modernizing licensure, continuing education, and mobility requirements, and reducing continuing education violations to assure licensees have a currency of knowledge. Any comments or feedback regarding these objectives? Okay. Moving on to page 8, which is customer service. There were no changes to the goal definition. The objectives added to this goal focus on enhancing the CBA's website, assessing customer satisfaction tools, implementing targeted messaging strategies to increase stakeholder feedback, and leaning on information technology to explore new ways to provide support to stakeholders. Are there any comments or feedback regarding the objectives under this goal? Okay, I will move on to page 9, the outreach goal. So the goal definition was changed for outreach. It was modernized to be more reflective of the outreach initiatives of the CBA. The primary change was to add "and educate the public" to the definition. So it now reads, provide outreach to a wide audience, grow audience diversity, increase consumer protection, and educate the public. The objectives added to this goal focus on a variety of initiatives, from expanding the public's awareness of the role of CPAs, increasing outreach efforts for underrepresented communities, expanding translation services for CBA resources, and implementing focused outreach to licensees and applicants. Are there any comments regarding the new definition or the objectives under the outreach goal?
I just have one question on the very last one, the 4.8. Can you, what is that?
So I can give you an example of this. For one of the examples we have is sending a communication to licensees as a reminder for their continuing education. So right now we have a lot of, there's licensees who aren't aware or maybe forget about the 2012 requirement, where you have to have a minimum number of hours in each year of your renewal cycle. So the point in time concept is where we would be sending a communication to those licensees during the first year of their renewal cycle, letting them know that you need to complete the 2012 in each year so they have time to do it. So that's just one example of a concept that we have for that.
Thank you. That's helpful.
So the definition of this goal was confusing to me because when I read the definition of it, I got one impression of the audience, but then when I read the definitions, I realized that the audience is intended to be much broader. Because, when I read the first goal, it sounds like the outreach is to non-licensees, to the public, but then it sounds like it really is to include licensees as well and professionals. So it feels like that definition should be edited, and I don't need to wordsmith it, but it seems like it needs to be edited so that it reflects that the audience includes consumers, licensees, other professionals, so that the audience is defined.
If you want to make a comment, go ahead and do so, but I would like to say something too after.
I'll defer to the board to discuss.
Yeah, I'm wondering though, Ms. Hine, what you're asking, because it sort of encompasses in the word wide audience. So do you want it more defined, maybe? Yeah.
I think that audience should be defined, because when I read it, especially with it ending with the phrase educate the public, to me, it is a goal that is focusing on our responsibility to protect the public, which is fine. But then when I read the objectives, it's both our responsibilities to regulate the industry and also to protect the public. And so the definition to me, especially with it ending in educate the public, to me, it then sounds like the audience really is outward and not, inward. It's not internal, encompassing of us. So I just think it's concise, and succinct, but sometimes there's some, miscommunication or, something can be lost in the, in the goal or in the, what's being communicated. So, I mean, it's a comment and,
Yeah.
that's how I read it. And so if I feel like if I read it that way, then others could read it that way too.
I'm wondering, is there a reason why we don't use the category, the goal as public outreach? Because that would sort of cover what Ms. Hine is talking about. Is there a reason why we just say outreach?
Well, I think, and I guess in my mind, outreach is more encompassing. It goes beyond the public because we're talking about applicants where, I mean, I guess you can make an argument that
Licensors.
applicants are the public, but
Right.
I think in our mind, the public is the consumer. And so outreach seems to be a bit broader. We've kind of transitioned even our outreach report, our outreach plan. So it's more kind of encompassing. So it would be applicants, consumers, licensees, all of that.
And for Ms. Hines' benefit, during our discussion in that month, whichever month it was, there were some discussion about being broader and not just because there's a lot of assumption that is for CPA licensors that we do outreach to, and it's actually broader than that, the public as well. So unless there's other board member feels strongly about making some changes, I think maybe we'll stick to the current wording. Right. Are you okay with that, Miss? Oh, Miss Colligan. Oh, actually, Miss Lada.
Thank you, President Tu. I'm in favor of getting more explicit with the definition as well. I can understand Ms. Hines' concerns and comment. What if we used the words maybe accounting stakeholders and the public? Would that include, firms, licensees, applicants? Would that term maybe more specifically define those as well as the public? I'm just throwing out suggestions.
President Tu, may I respond to that? Would it
Please.
be, Ms. Hines, if we added on and educate the public, I think to try to help that statement, but it sounds like that's maybe making it, in your view, maybe more narrow focused on public. If that was removed and we kept what we had previously, just provide outreach to a wide audience, grow audience diversity, and increase consumer protection, and we didn't include the educate the public, would that in your mind maybe make it broader so that it's more inclusive, and we're not trying to be inclusive or, and specific at the same time? Would
Yeah.
that help?
It's the inclusion of and educate the public for me that made it feel like it's really just focused on the public.
Okay.
But then again, like I said, then when I started reading the objectives, I said, wait, this is including, internal and external, stakeholders. And so it helps. It does help to me.
Okay.
And then you don't have to add extra words in the beginning to try to make sure that the message is being conveyed, that this is intended to have breadth, in terms of the audience that we're focusing on.
Ms. Corrigan.
Today, I don't know about the past 2 meetings ago, whatever it was, I'm kind of reading that and educate the public as an add-on. So removing it is fine by me because in the points below it from 4.1 to 4.8, I guess, kind of covers it all and tells what encompasses, what the wide audience encompasses. So thank you.
Yeah, one of the point was outreaching to the school, even middle school. So we can remove that wording. Any other comments from board member? Right now, we're looking at removing that 2 words. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Priest.
Okay, we are going to move to page 10, which is laws and regulations. So there were no changes to the goal definition. The objectives added to this goal focus on changes to support the modernization of the CBA's licensure, mobility, and continuing education requirements, and monitoring national developments related to alternative practice structures and artificial intelligence in the accounting profession. Are there any comments regarding the objectives under the laws and regulations goal?
I have a number of comments. So
Hey, Ms. Hine, we
I'll just
love.
take by section. So in this section, I was the use of the words legislative influence kind of caught my attention, because it makes it seem like the legislature acts independently of the CBA, and then the CBA has to be proactive in influencing the legislature, as opposed to the CBA really being the driver of the legislation and rules and regulations that are promulgated. So, legislative engagement or legislative, you know, maybe instead of saying the CBA's position of legislative influence, saying the CBA's, collaboration with the legislature or engagement with the legislature or something like that. Because we're not influencing the legislature. We are the advisory, body to the legislature to help them to pass the legislation that protects the consumers.
Ms. Pierce, you have.
Absolutely. If we want to change that particular goal, there's a little bit of history on this, and that many moons ago, and prior boards, they really did want to try to increase the presence and influence, I guess is the word, with the legislature. So this was actually modified, I think maybe 3 or 4 strategic plans ago, something like that. And so there was some intent there. It was a different legislative climate, obviously different board, and so. Obviously happy to change it with the suggestions. We can wordsmith it if we want to include, engagement or collaboration, and kind of adjust the ending of that particular goal definition.
I think you meant engagement. I think you meant lead or guide.
Well, if there is engagement, because we do, but we also do, now that I'm talking it through, thinking about it, we also do discuss, or we provide our support and our position on other pieces of legislation aside from rules and regulations that the CBA is passing. So that's relevant to the accounting practice. So engagement would be an accurate word for other kinds of legislation, non-accounting related, legislation that is relevant to or important to, our work. So, so legislative engagement and collaboration, or, again, I'm like, I know it's hard to wordsmith in the moment, and, I'm putting it out there. I don't know if that's something that if it's easier for you to have specific language from us, or if it's okay for, you to take it back and then to, recommend some language, based upon, what, looking at what, was discussed at the strategic planning meeting. I'm, open to deferring to it. I'm not wedded to particular language, but I wanted to have the discussion. I thought that was not quite as, pointed and accurate a reflection of what our role is in the legislative process.
How about we note your comment and have staff take a look. If there is a better wording, then let us know. Yeah. Give us a.
Yeah, we can, I have some ideas using the wording, and maybe when we get to the motion part, if the members were comfortable with it, we could, part of the motion could be to work with President to finalize the terminology, hearing your comments, and also reflecting back to the November meeting to finalize it. And then if we need to make an adjustment at some point in the future, we can certainly do that as well.
I'm comfortable.
Thank you, Ms. Hine. Go ahead, continue.
Thank you. The next goal is on page 11, emerging technologies. So the goal definition was updated to be more reflective of the CBA's information technology role and priorities today. The prior goal definition was really focused on ensuring information security. And while this is still an important issue, the security aspects of the CBA's IT network are really managed by the Department of Consumer Affairs, following a project to merge with their platform in July of 23. So we've updated the goal definition to read, develop digital tools to enhance user experiences and improve efficiency. The objectives added to this goal focus on the CBA's business modernization projects to create a universal online application processing system, and also considerations for transitioning away from DCA's current licensee database. Are there any comments regarding the new definition or the objectives under this particular goal?
So user to me was the term that kind of jumped out, and it seems like it should be stakeholder or something like that, because the user is just too broad of a term, too generic of a term to me.
Now, that's a very good suggestion, Ms. Hine. Yes, Ms. Lada.
Yes, I thought the same thing with the user experiences. I thought it was very vague, and I wasn't sure if that was referring to our candidates and licensees or if that was referring to staff. So I agree with that comment.
I think we were trying to be broad because in this particular one, it could be anybody. It could be staff because of the particular business modernization. Obviously, there's an internal and an external component. So it could be an applicant, a licensee, a consumer filing a complaint, a staff person processing something through the system. So it was broad. I think if stakeholder is more clearer, then we can certainly replace user with stakeholder.
Ms. Ward?
Not to rock the boat, but I do like the word user, because to me, user friendly. So I do like the word user myself, because say I was to help someone log on, then I'm not a stakeholder per se. I am someone logging onto a website that's user friendly. I don't know. I like the word user.
Ms. Corrigan?
I tend to agree with the term user as well and what it can encompass, and that it's clear to someone trying to understand what it means. Thank you.
Yes. Go ahead.
I have a comment.
I'll let Ms. Batchelor go first.
Oh, all right. I also like the word user, because if I were part of the public and I'm filing a complaint, then if I saw the word stakeholder, I might be confused as well. Am I a stakeholder or not? So I also like the word user.
Mr. Vanzelli?
I was just going to comment that part of the term user was just because it's a common IT term for that type of experience, the user interface, the user experience. So we were trying to maintain some continuity because of the nature of what it is. It is stakeholders would be part of that, but just using the term user was more of an IT generated kind of idea.
I like that explanation. So, yes, Ms. Hine.
I appreciate the technical term, and also the lay definition of it. But when you look at the objectives, I interpreted the objectives as focused on those folks who are engaging with the CBA. So particularly number one, who is paying for, paying who's paying for their enforcement penalties, who's, reviewing who's using the database, who's doing data transfer and report generation. That would be staff, or that would be licensees. Who is, the second one says licensee information to support business modernization initiatives. Well, I guess the licensee database would be accessible to the public. And then the third one, a cashiering process, that's for people who are paying, so that would be licensee, and that would be the staff that's processing it. So, I mean, again, it's like if it's intended to have a specific audience, then I feel like because we're communicating to the world, like these are our strategic goals. Our goals are to make it easier for, the public and for stakeholders to use our technology. To me, that would be more descriptive and more accurate than just using a technical term like user, or using a layperson, definition like everybody, who might interact with the system. That's just the rationale that I have behind it. But again, like not completely wedded, but I just thought we'd have the conversation about
Ms. Lada?
Thank you, President Chu. Considering the discussion on the table, I am comfortable proceeding with user experiences, but for objective 6.1, it seems to encompass public-facing systems and internal systems, like the Universal Online Application Processing System. I assume that's something our candidates and licensees would be using and staff is using, but the enforcement case management tool, it seemed more like an internal tool. So I would suggest maybe separating that objective from the public-facing systems and the internal systems, if that makes sense. It just seems to kind of jumble everything kind of together. And I think it would be a little more clear to separate those two objectives.
Can certainly work on wordsmithing to separate it. I think the reason we have it included is because it's one software solution for that encompasses all of those things. And the concept is to have a one-stop shop, I guess, if you will, where users, applicants, licensees, whoever it may be, applying for examination, licensure, license renewal, or a consumer, it's one software solution where they can go in and, access whatever particular component that they need. So we've kind of captured it in this one particular, because that's kind of how it's framed. But if there's a concern that it may be too complex and it would be better split up into an internal and an external user, but that was kind of the reasoning behind this.
What do you think of that, Ms. Latta?
Okay, thank you for the clarification. That makes sense. Maybe just improving the verbiage so that it's clear that all of those things are encompassed in the system. I know it says comprehensive at the top, but it just wasn't clear to me that all of those systems were, the solutions were included in one software solution.
Yeah, you can take a look at it and see if there's any improvement. And Ms. Hine, thank you for your comment, but I'm hearing the room. Oh, Ms. Batchelor has some.
I was wondering how would the feel of probably adding language to it and maybe encompassing user and or stakeholders? Would that seem to suffice?
In my mind, okay, Ms. Rosenbaum.
Yeah, I would just like to say, I think it's clear for user in this particular one because it is dealing with computer systems. And I think it is commonly understood what users mean. It's the person who is using the system. And I think it's appropriate to use it in this particular goal and objective.
Yeah, and go ahead, Ms. Carrigan.
And I agree with that comment as well. A stakeholder can be or is a user. I think the way that it's written covers it all, and I'm willing to accept it the way it's written. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm going to move on now with staff, and we appreciate the comment. And I think I'm reading the room. Majority of us would like to continue using user. So Ms. Pierce, you want to continue?
May I just clarify, did the board want clarification on objective 6.1 on that following Ms. Latta's comment?
Same as the previous one, you can take a look at, staff can take a look at it. If there's a possibility to clarify it and make it more clear, you and I can work on it. And would that be okay, Ms. Latta?
I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to page 12, the goal of organizational effectiveness. The goal definition was updated to remove a reference to leaders and professionals. The new definition is clear that it applies to all CBA staff regardless of their role. The new definition now reads, maintain an efficient and effective team. The objectives added to this goal focus on staff development and cross-training for upward mobility, promoting the CBA's internal office culture initiatives, and working to transition to electronic solutions and phase out the CBA's reliance on paper files. Are there any comments regarding the new definition or the objectives under the organizational effectiveness goal?
I thought it was too succinct. It's kind of, it's very, to me, broad in general. And so, and now, you know, hearing the explanation about what it changed from, I might recommend changing it or consider like looking back at some of the comments and considering changing it to develop strategies or processes to, you know, to maintain an efficient and effective team or something like that. It just, it's very brief to me. It doesn't have a stated goal. I mean, sure, you want to maintain an efficient, effective team. Why? How? What are you going to do to change it? Like, it doesn't, to me, describe what actionable steps are going to be taken to try to achieve that goal. I mean, the objectives identify it, but the definition to me should have some, you know, indication of what that, you know, summarization, it should summarize to some extent what that actionable steps that are going to be taken. And that's similar to what is happening in the other goals. It's how the other goals are defined as well. It's a comment.
Thank you for that comment. All right. Moving on.
Okay.
Ada?
Thank you. I just wanted to note a minor typo in the goal that team should be, was that intentionally uppercase or should that be lowercase?
No, but should be lowercase.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good eye. All right. Now you can move on.
Okay, so the proposed strategic plan contains 34 objectives and covers 5 years. Once the plan is approved, staff will finalize it with the design as reflected in attachment 2 and post it to the CBA's website. So I have just kind of an updated motion to reflect some of the discussion here. So staff recommends the CBA make a motion to approve the 2025-2029 strategic plan and work with President 2 on the goal definitions for goal 4, 5, and 7 and wordsmithing on objective 6.1. And I'll turn it back over to President 2.
Ms. Hine?
So moved.
Point of order, Michael Connotes, legal counsel. I think if the board proceeds in this matter, you will still need to bring it back because you're going to be changing the text of the strategic plan. And it's a little more of a change than sort of doing some wordsmithing on another document, since the strategic plan is a creature of statute and is a requirement. So I'd recommend either working out the language now or bringing it back at the next meeting for approval.
Okay. I think we can do that, right? Yep. Yeah. All right. Oh, would you like to pull your motion back until we have further discussion?
Do we have a motion? Because there wasn't a second.
Is there a second? First of all?
There's the motion on the floor, so I just want to make sure we clear
The
what
motion.
that is. And if the board is supporting them, again, this is a recommendation to bring it back. The board has historically taken motions of a similar vein and directed with the president to make the edits. But as Mr. Connotes has noted, maybe because of the nature of the document, the board may want to consider it, but I think that's something the board can consider and direct staff accordingly.
Yeah,
Just procedurally, was there a second?
not yet. I'm asking for a second right now.
Okay, so if there's no second, then
Moot
the
point.
motion's now off the floor and we're discussing.
Is there a second? No, okay, yeah. Got it. That's correct. We all agree to that. So there's no motion. Should we now then continue to do some more discussion, or is there another motion on the floor? Ms. Thompson?
I am of the opinion that maybe staff can take this back and present it again at our next meeting for finalization. I don't know if we're going to all agree on sort of the word changes today in this meeting.
Ms. Lata?
I was just gonna ask, since we've had 2 one-day meetings in a row, just does that fit in with staff scheduling and our timing for the remaining meetings to fit that in? I just want to make sure.
Let's hope that because we had a lot of discussion this time, that once we do make some changes, potential changes, then at the next meeting, it will be a lot shorter discussion. And the item should be much quicker. We wouldn't do all the reporting that Ms. Pierce did and just talk about the changes. Is that fair to everybody? Sounds good? Staff have direction now, so we'll bring this item back when we make some changes, potential changes, I should say. And Mr. Go, are you satisfied with that?
Of course.
Good.
And my apologies, I'm sure
I
staff.
aim
didn't
to
get this
please.
In today, but I think a strategic plan.
No.
I mean, the other thing to realize is at the workshop for this, it was a substantially long workshop and there were facilitators and there was a lot of wordsmithing that happened there. So I think the expectation was to approve it today, but again, I think if you're going to be changing the language in any substantive way, then you need to bring it back.
And it's not like we have to do it this month. So we'll go with what the plan is for now, and we'll come back to May meeting and put this on the agenda. All right. Any other comment from the public now from Sacramento? Seeing none, we still don't have anybody from WebEx, correct, moderator?
That is correct.
Okay, I'm gonna wait until you tell me otherwise. All right. Item is done for now. We're moving on to item 2I, discussion and possible action for the American Institution of CPAs and NASPA's exposure draft on proposed revision on the Uniform Accountancy Act regarding licensure and mobility. Mr. Francine.
Thank you, President Tu. So the purpose of this agenda item is to provide the CBA an opportunity to consider a response to the recently released AICPA and NASBA jointly issued exposure draft on proposed Uniform Accountancy Act changes. The exposure draft, which was a link in the item, summarizes the proposed changes and includes a strike to an underlined version of the current UAA incorporating these proposed changes. The exposure draft replaces the 2 prior drafts issued in September 2024 to propose revisions to initial licensure requirements and mobility, including the original competency-based experience model. The AICPA and NASBA received extensive comments on those 2 exposure drafts and addressed many of the concerns, took those comments and addressed many of the concerns in the new vision. The most notable change is obviously the removal of the competency-based experience. Some of the other notable changes in the exposure draft for licensure, for the licensure aspects include eliminating the total unit requirement and transitioning to a degree requirement, resulting in a more evergreen approach to education. For mobility, the changes move from a state-based substantial equivalency model to an individual mobility model based on the new licensure pathways that are included in the UAA. The item our team put together provides members a comparison of the proposed UAA changes to the CBA-sponsored AB 1175. So I recommend the board consider issuing the attached comment letter expressing an appreciation to the AICPA and NASBA for listening to stakeholders regarding the prior exposure drafts, as well as informing them of our current bill, AB 1175. If the CBA wishes to make changes to the comment letter, I recommend authority be delegated to the CBA president to approve the comment letter for submission. With that, I will turn it back over to President Tu, and I'll do my best to answer members' questions.
Do any board member have any question or comments? Seeing, yes, Ms. Latta.
I move to approve the comment letter in attachment 1.
Corrigan,
I second that motion. Thank you.
any further discussion? Any comment from the public in Sacramento? Seeing none, Ms. Reed, could you take a roll?
Evangeline Ward,
Yes.
Yin Tu,
Yes.
Teresa Thompson,
Yes.
Joe Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Bruce Rafel,
Yes.
Tony Lynn,
Yes.
Christian Lotta,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Nancy Dong,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Patricia Batchelor,
Yes.
and Doug Aguilera.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. All right, that was good item. And the next one, of course, is the Department of Consumer Affairs Director's report on department activity. Ms. Bombe.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Leslie Barmby with the California Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you for the opportunity to meet with you today. On January 29th, 2025, Governor Newsom released Executive Order N1525, providing quick recovery relief for local businesses by defining renewal fees and waiving their fees for DCA licensees in the Los Angeles wildfire areas. Specific DCA provisions include DCA licensees whose licenses expire between January 1st and July 1st, 2025 will be granted a one-year extension to pay their renewal fees if their business or residence address is in certain zip codes impacted by the fires. Licensees will still need to renew their licenses, but their fees will be postponed for 1 year. In addition, duplicate or replacement licenses or wall certificates will be provided free of charge until January 7th, 2026. And delinquency fees are suspended until July 1st, 2025 for those in the impacted areas. DCA met with board and bureau leadership on January 29th to discuss the executive order and its implementation. DCA provided messaging to the boards and bureaus for dissemination to the impacted licensees, as well as consistent messaging for use on all board and bureau websites. Boards and bureaus have shared the executive order and fee deferral opportunity with their stakeholders. We sincerely appreciate the quick and personal outreach by the boards and bureaus to the impacted licensees. Each DCA board and bureau website was updated with information for individuals impacted by the fires. DCA's Office of Information Services, DCA's IT team, also developed a landing pages for all online databases, so those going through the renewal process will receive information regarding the fee deferral when they go to renew their license online. DCA has also dedicated Disaster Help Center website accessible at www.dca.ca.gov that includes information on the executive order, FAQs, and other important resources that may be helpful to licensees and survivors as they navigate the rebuilding process. Additionally, DCA has a toll-free phone number, 1-800-799-8314, and email cafires@dca.ca.gov, available for fire survivors needing assistance. We are grateful to the governor for this opportunity to assist our licensees in their time of unprecedented need. A special thank you to the DCA board and bureau leadership for their continued partnership and commitment to help survivors. Finally, I wanted to provide an update regarding DCA's board and bureau relations team. Melissa Gear was appointed by the governor as Deputy Director of Legislative and Governmental Affairs at the Department of Healthcare Access and Information on February 14th. She's been with DCA since September 2022. Her last day with DCA was February 28th. We appreciate Melissa's dedication to the department and wish her well in her new role. Ongoing, should you have any questions or need assistance, please continue to contact DCA at membersrelations@dca.ca.gov. On behalf of the director, I would like to thank the board and staff for their continued hard work and thank you for your dedicated service on behalf of California consumers. I appreciate your time this morning and welcome any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Bonby. Correct. Any question for Ms. Bonby? Seeing none, thank you again for your presentation. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot about public comment. Is there any public comment from the audience in Sacramento? Seeing none, now the item is finished. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 3, report from our Vice President, Ms. Lottie.
Thank you, President Tu. Okay, so we have agenda item 3A, appointments and reappointments to the Enforcement Advisory Committee. This item is to recommend the reappointment of Jennifer E. Benjamin, CPA, to the Enforcement Advisory Committee. The Enforcement Advisory Committee assists the CBA in an advisory capacity with enforcement activities. This includes reviewing closed investigation files, providing technical guidance on open investigations, and participating in investigative hearings. I conferred with the CBA Executive Officer to verify that Ms. Benjamin has met the appropriate requirements for license renewal and has demonstrated the skills and knowledge to continue to serve as a member on the Enforcement Advisory Committee. I would like to make a motion to reappoint Jennifer E. Benjamin, CPA, to the Enforcement Advisory Committee through March 31st, 2027. I will turn it back to President Tu to get a second.
See a second, Ms. Thompson.
Second her reappointment.
All right. Any discussion? In Sacramento, any public comment? Seeing none, Ms. Reed, would you like to take a roll on the vote?
Doug Aguilera,
Yes.
Patricia Batchelor,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Nancy Dong,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines, Christian Lotta,
Yes.
Tony Lynn,
Yes.
Bruce Rayfel,
Yes.
Joe Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Teresa Thompson,
Yes.
Yen Tu,
Yes.
and Evangeline Ward.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Ms. Tu, can I continue?
Please continue.
Okay, so we have no appointments or reappointments to the Peer Review Oversight Committee today, so item 3B is complete. So we'll move on to item 3C, appointments and reappointments to the Qualifications Committee. This item is to recommend the reappointment of Anthony Gonzalez II, CPA, to the Qualifications Committee. The Qualifications Committee assists the CBA in its licensure activities by reviewing the experience of applicants for licensure and making recommendations to the CBA. This includes conducting work paper reviews with the applicant or the employer present to verify that the responses provided are reflective of the requisite experience for licensure. I conferred with the CBA Executive Officer to verify that Mr. Gonzalez has met the appropriate requirements for license renewal and has demonstrated the skills and knowledge to continue to serve as a member on the Qualifications Committee. I would like to make a motion to reappoint Anthony Gonzalez II, CPA, to the Qualifications Committee through March 31st, 2027. I will turn it back to President Tu and ask for a second.
Is there a second to the motion? Ms. Dong? Ms. Dong is making the second for the motion. I'm sorry. No, Ms. Dong. Okay. Anybody from Sacramento would like to make a comment? Seeing none, Ms. Reed, please take a roll.
Evangeline Ward,
Yes.
Yen Tu,
Yes.
Teresa Thompson,
Yes.
Joe Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Bruce Rayfel,
Yes.
Tony Lynn,
Yes.
Christian Lotta,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
Nancy Dong,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Patricia Batchelor,
Yes.
and Doug Aguilera. Motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed, and thank you, Ms. Lata, for your report as well. For item number 4, I would like to move that to after lunch. So we're going to move on to item number 5, report from the Executive Officer. Item 5A is the Administration Activity Report. Ms. Abeda will be reporting out.
Good morning, President Tu and members of the board. For those that are new, my name is Christy Abate. I am the Administration Division, I'm the Administration Services Unit Manager. So I will be presenting the Admin Division report. I am happy to share that the CBA has reached the final stages of the lease renewal process and has begun scheduling the tenant improvements, some of which include minor touch-up paint to the office, water filler stations, and some modular system reconfigurations that will help us better utilize the space that we currently have. More detailed information such as the lease, terms, and costs will be shared at the May CBA meeting. Moving on to DCA will be releasing an updated sexual harassment prevention training later this year. All CBA members and staff will be required to complete the new training once released. Once we have additional information, we will share that with all of you. On January 29th, the CBA took part in the Department of Consumer Affairs 2025 Career Fair. Job seekers had the opportunity to speak with CBA staff about the organization and its available job openings. The event also featured a workshop and how to apply for state jobs, as well as provided assistance with the online application process. Staff continued to make progress on the business modernization project and have been participating in various meetings with the DCA Office of Information Services. Staff have also begun the development of planning the examination application for integration to the CBA Connect platform. On March 3rd, Governor Newsom issued Executive Order N2225 to all state employees, which ordered all agencies and departments subject to the governor's authority to implement a hybrid telework policy with a default minimum of 4 in-person days per week. The California Department of Human Resources published guidance to assist agencies and departments in implementing this executive order, and the CBA will be working with the department DCA on the transition for staff. On February 26th, Executive Officer Dominic Franzella had the first in-person all-staff meeting for 2025. Topics included discussion on CBA leadership and 2025 priorities, division accomplishments from 2024 and goals for 2025, enhancing office culture, and staff appreciation and recognition. A highlight of the meeting was the premiere of The Mission video created by the CBA's very own outreach team. With cinematic production, the iconic Mission Impossible movie theme, CBA's David Hemphill and Deanne Pierce starred in an endurance-packed mission to recover the golden materials essential for the all-staff meeting. The video culminated with Hemphill retrieving a briefcase containing the coveted golden materials just in the nick of time for his CBA Yays award presentation. Inside the briefcase were miniature Oscar statues, which were presented to CBA staff in recognition for their contributions to the production of various videos throughout the year. The Mission, which earned an impressive 89% on Rotten Tomatoes, captivated staff, leaving them entertained and eager for more. It added a playful and memorable touch to staff recognition, making the meeting even more enjoyable. It is clear that this kind of innovative recognition is a hit, and we can't wait to see what the outreach team comes up with next at the next all-staff meeting. That concludes my presentation on this agenda item. I'll turn it back over to President Tu, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for that report. I love that you guys are having some fun. That is fantastic. I want to see the statue, by the way. Yeah, lunchtime. Bring back. We would like to see that. Any comments or question from the board? Yes, Ms. Latta.
Thank you, President Tu. I was just curious what some of the staff feedback were. Did you guys get any direct feedback? It says it was a hit, but I was just curious to hear some of the feedback.
Did you receive any direct feedback?
Yeah, some of the managers said that their staff really appreciated it, that they thought it was fun. When we were at the actual staff meeting, just the reaction on staff's face, not just with the Mission movie, which was clearly the highlight. But no, I'm not saying that because I was in it, but just each division did an update, and each division really pulled in their staff and in the different presentations, and each division had a completely different presentation. It was really cool. But just seeing the expressions on staff face, the interaction of staff during an all-staff meeting, it was really cool. And then afterwards, several staff came up to me, and I'm sure probably some of the other management team, and really said, hey, that was a great meeting. And so I feel like we did get a good response back from staff. Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I know we noted priorities in improving our staff culture, and it sounds like that's underway and things are being well received. So I appreciate all the effort with leadership and being so creative and making it fun for staff. I'm sure they appreciate that. And then I just had one comment on, I believe it's page 3 of the report regarding the vacancy rate of 14%. I was just curious in regards to other boards, is that kind of on par with the vacancies across the board? Or I just was trying to gauge like where we are in terms of kind of the general climate of the vacancy rates.
So we haven't actively went out and looked at that. So, I mean, we certainly can do that. The vacancy information for other boards isn't usually shared, during various budget meetings or anything. Each board has their own, obstacles on hiring. It's all based on classifications, if there's a hard to recruit position. So we can certainly poke around a little bit, but it's kind of not apples to apples, probably be more apples to oranges, if you will.
Well, historically speaking, is this at a low point or a very high point of vacancies?
I'm sorry.
For us.
For the
CBA.
board, I would say that we typically average around a 7 to 10% vacancy rate. That's just kind of on my brain. We could go back and do a little bit more. Christy would probably know a little bit more, but I would say 7 to 10% is kind of the average vacancy rate going on. We do have a hard to recruit classification, so that adds to the vacancy rate position as well.
Concur.
Oh,
nice. And I see some prop you have.
Yes, so these were the certificates that the staff received, and then these were the little Oscars.
I'm hoping that they all display in their office proudly, right? You do? Excellent. I'm glad to hear that.
Best actress.
Oh.
I hope that I'm nominated for the next award show.
Lovely. Any other comment? I already asked for public comments from Sacramento. Seeing none, thank you very much, Christy.
Thank you.
All right, next item on our agenda is 5B, enforcement activity. Ms. Roden?
Good morning, President Tu and members. My name is Corey Rudin. I'm the Deputy Enforcement Chief of the Enforcement Division. The activity report before members today is for the first 7 months of the fiscal year 2024-25. Starting with complaints received, the CBA has received over 3,000 complaints in the first 7 months of the fiscal year. The graph on page 1 provides a comparison of the total complaints received as of the same reporting period for the prior 2 fiscal years. On page 2, we have included information on the top 3 complaint types, with complaints regarding unlicensed activity being the most common. Moving on to investigations and investigations pending on page 3. At the end of the first 7 months of the fiscal year, staff closed nearly 4,000 cases, with 98% closed within 1 year. The average days to close was 94 days. Enforcement had 864 cases in its pending investigations inventory, with 1 case pending over 24 months, which is still being actively investigated. Discipline-related information can be found on page 4 of the report. Looking first at AG referrals, the CBA referred 23 matters to the AG and filed 22 pleadings. The CBA has 31 matters pending at the AG's office. And lastly, the CBA has taken action on 18 final disciplinary orders. Moving on to citations on page 5, the CBA issued 1,247 citations. 94% of the citations were issued due to failing to comply with the 20 and 12 continuing education requirement. The CBA has received 91 citation and fine appeals. We have withdrawn or modified 56 citations based on those appeals, with most cases, in most cases, the licensee either provided new mitigating evidence or complied with the issue that resulted in the issuance of the citation. Page 6 contains information regarding unlicensed activity. The CBA has received just over 1,400 complaints regarding unlicensed activity. We closed over 1,600 investigations for the first 7 months of the fiscal year. The final area of the report I'd like to highlight is on page 7 and is related to probation monitoring. As of January 31st, we had 54 licensees on probation, with 4 new probationers since the last report. We identified 14 probation violations, with the majority being failure to submit written quarterly reports. At this time, I'd like to turn the discussion of this item over to President Tu and would be happy to answer any questions members may have.
Thank you for the presentation. Anybody have a question or comment? Seeing none, is there any public comment from Sacramento? Seeing none, well, you did a great report. Nobody.
Madam Board President?
Yes.
Oh.
Mr. Moderator.
We have a new person online. And
Okay. I will ask you to open up WebEx for any comment from WebEx.
we are open for public comment via WebEx. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to wait just a few seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request for public comment, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you very much, moderator. All right, agenda item now. Thank you again. Agenda item number 5C, licensing activity report. Ms. Garcia.
Thank you, President Tu. I'm Suzanne Gracia, and I'm the Deputy Chief of the Licensing Division. This licensing activity report, or LAR, covers July 1st, 2024 through January 31st, 2025. The LAR begins with the reporting of processing times, and I'm pleased to report the processing times remained under 30 days. The NASBA CPA exam performance summary for the 4th testing quarter of 2024 is attached. California's jurisdictional ranking for the overall pass rate improved from a 37 in the first quarter to a 23 in the 4th quarter. The pass rates are by individual section and do not represent those who have passed all 4 sections. The report also notes that tax compliance and planning was the most common discipline section for all jurisdictions in the 4th quarter of 2024. On page 3, lists the inquiries received in the licensing division. I'm pleased to announce that the CBA obtained telephone data in January 2025. The licensing division received 16,634 telephone inquiries and 41,505 email inquiries between July 1st, 2024 and January 31st, 2025, bringing the total number of inquiries to 58,139. On to pages 4 and 5. As of January 31st, 2025, the examination unit has approved over 2,400 first-time applicants to sit for the CPA exam. The initial licensing unit has approved 2,243 applications for new CPA and firm licenses. On page 6 and 7, data related to renewal statistics, renewal deficiencies, and continuing education audits are displayed. As of January 31st, 2025, over 27,000 renewal applications were processed. Table 7 includes CE audit data. As of January 31st, 2025, the renewal unit had performed 455 audits. Of the 455, 349 were found to be compliant, and 51 were initially deficient but are now compliant. That concludes my presentation. I will now turn it back over to President Tu and happy to answer questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Any question from the board members? Seeing none. Any comment or question from the audience in Sacramento? Seeing none. And I believe that there's no public members.
No public via WebEx.
All right. Thank you, moderator. All right. Thank you again for your presentation. The next item on agenda is 5D, Outreach Activity Report. Mr. Hemhill, I don't know if you're going to be able to top the last prop that was presented.
I know.
I'm
I'll
just
do my
saying.
best.
Yes.
Well, hello again. Members of the CBA, I am David Hempill, and I will be presenting item 5D, which is our outreach activity report. So first, a quick recap of the first two outreach events of 2025. The CBA headed to the University of California, Berkeley on February 21st to present your CPA roadmap. Jeffrey Moline, CPA, chair of the Qualifications Committee, opened the presentation by talking about the role of the CBA and providing his expertise on the value of a CPA license. Then I walked the students through the uniform CPA examination and CPA licensure requirements and let them know about the requirement changes pending with Assembly Bill 1175, which was kind of exciting, was actually introduced the day of the event. Students were extremely engaged and may have actually set the record for most questions at an outreach event. They had a lot of questions, which was great. They were particularly interested in the timeline for the licensure requirement changes, asking a lot of specific questions on that topic. Later in the month, the CBA virtually presented your CPA roadmap to students at California State University, Northridge. CBA member Teresa Thompson, CPA, joined me for this presentation. Similar to the Berkeley event, Ms. Thompson spoke on the role of the CBA and discussed her own path to licensure and what the CPA designation has meant to her career. CBA Examination Unit Manager Patty Ritter assisted with another great question and answer session. CBA Executive Officer Dominic Franzella spoke at Cal CPA's Legislative Summit in early February. He focused on the legislative proposals and gave an update on the CBA's 2025 priorities. Our outreach calendar is continuing to fill up for the year. The CBA will be participating in California State University San Bernardino's Beta Alpha Psi's Spring Banquet on May 8th. This will mark the 5th year that the CBA has partnered with San Bernardino. Member Nancy Corrigan, CPA, will be giving some of our presentation at that event, as she has done the last few years. We thank her for that. We are in the process of organizing additional events for the year, including finalizing the location for the September CBA meeting, which will again take place on a college campus. Moving on to multimedia content, 2 new episodes of the Accounting for California podcast were released since our January meeting. The first features our very own CBA President Yen Tu. She spoke about her dedication, to volunteering and the CBA priorities for the year. We also discussed her love of travel. So if you want to find out her favorite travel destination, you gotta listen. See, that's what they call a tease. All right. The second episode features another conversation between our executive officer, Dominic Franzella, and Cal CPA's president and CEO, Denise Fremming, CPA. The podcast updates the progress of AB 1175 as it moves through the legislative process and breaks down exactly what the bill does and then how the CBA will eventually use regulations to fill the box or add in more specific details. The timeline when all of this may take effect, should the bill become law, is also discussed. Following the release of the podcast video last week, we have a lot of other things planned to help get the word out about our Assembly bill. A video discussing particular scenarios regarding the licensure requirement changes provided by actual CPA candidates will be posted in the next few days. We will also be hosting a live Q&A session on Instagram early next month where candidates or other interested parties can get answers to their questions about the bill directly from us. This is just the beginning of a large amount of outreach that will be occurring throughout this year and beyond regarding AB 1175. 2 weeks ago, the CBA celebrated Consumer Protection Week, as I'm sure you all did too. Staff produced a series of videos and shared a different one each day on our social media platforms. They covered topics like details on the complaint and enforcement process, and also spotlighted our newly redesigned consumer assistance booklet. The social media series was extremely successful, generating almost 4,000 video views across all platforms and reinforced our dedication to consumer protection all year long. Update issue 104 will be published later this month. This edition will be the second produced fully in-house by our outreach team and is currently undergoing final edits. It includes an interview with CBA members Patricia Batchelor, CPA, and Teresa Thompson, CPA, discussing what it's like working at a large firm, in Ms. Thompson's case, versus a small firm, as Ms. Batchelor does. Other articles include avoiding application abandonment, staying balanced during busy seasons, which we are definitely in one now for all the CPAs, and of course, the latest about AB 1175, all featured in that issue. Staff has also been sharing reminders that the CPA exam credit extensions that were enacted by the CBA in late 2023 will be expiring on June 30th, 2025. In addition to an article in this issue of Update, we have posted about it on social media and will be sending a listserv email to those affected. Lastly, let's peek at our social media growth. In just the first 2 months of this year, we've gained 623 followers across all of our social media platforms. LinkedIn continues to be our fastest growing platform, and we hope to continue the positive traction we've created with campaigns like our Consumer Protection Week video series and keep it going with much more messaging that has already begun about the Assembly Bill 1175. Something that was occurring right around our meeting in January, the CBA was actively involved in providing and amplifying Los Angeles wildfire-related information from other state agencies beginning in middle to late January. I wanted to make sure you knew that we did create a dedicated webpage that featured details about the CBA assistance we're providing for those affected by the fires. We also produced our own video alerting licensees to the available CBA resources, including the renewal fee postponement that was authorized by Governor Newsom. That concludes my presentation on this agenda item. I'll turn it back over to President Tu, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hemphill. Do we have any board member with question for him? Don't make it easy for him. But you know, I had butterfly. I did the first podcast. He makes it so easy. You know, he's a professional. So
You were excellent, President Tu.
Thank you.
I couldn't believe it was the first podcast you'd ever done.
Ever in my life.
Wow.
And I don't think I'm going to do it another one.
Oh,
just
come on.
unless you're there.
You were great.
Unless you're there. All right. Anybody else has any questions or comments? Oh, they're letting you off easy. Miss Lata.
Thank you, President Tu. Mr. Hemphill, I was just curious, the spring banquet at Cal State San Bernardino, what exactly will CBA be doing there?
We'll be giving largely a similar presentation. Ms. Corrigan has graciously done it now. This is at least your third year in a row that you've been doing it. So she'll kind of open discussing the CBA's role. They definitely have asked to have a discussion about the pending licensure changes. So that's definitely going to be part of it. I'll be giving kind of a shortened version of the requirements for exam and licensure. We are also going to have a couple of our licensing staff on hand to do transcript reviews. So that is a popular feature that we do there. I know they have a NASBA representative as well that's going to be speaking as well. So that's, in a nutshell, what will be happening.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention, and I encourage all the board members to repost a lot of the LinkedIn posts that CBA go out to, because I think that helps a lot.
Thank you for that. Yes, we appreciate any interaction and sharing you're willing to do.
All right. Do we have any comment from Sacramento location? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Hemphill, for your report. And yeah. All right. We are now on item number 6, report on the enforcement Advisory Committee, Qualification Committee, and the Peer Review Oversight Committee. Item 6A, we have no report because they have not met yet. So item 6B, we have the Peer Review Oversight Committee. Mr. Hianosa is here to report out. Oh, actually, he is on WebEx.
Good morning, President Tu, members of the board. I am Fausto Hinojosa, Chair of the CBA's Peer Review Oversight Committee. I was appointed to the PROC in 2021 and served as the Vice Chair in 2023 and 2024. I previously served as a member and chair of the CBA's Qualifications Committee. I'm pleased to be here to provide the report of the PROC meeting, which was held at the CBA headquarters and on WebEx on February 14th. I would like to thank Michelle Center for providing an overview of the CBA's activities from the January 23rd CBA meeting. The PROC discussed, provided feedback, and approved its December 13, 2024 meeting minutes. PROC members attended 3 report acceptance body meetings since our last PROC meeting. PROC members reported that the report acceptance body meetings all met expectations. PROC members reviewed 2 out-of-state administering entities, the Tennessee Society of CPAs and Virginia Society of CPAs. It was determined that they complied with the administrative procedures and standards in all material respects as established by the CBA. Lastly, the PROC approved the draft 2024 Peer Review Oversight Committee Annual Report, which I will present during the next agenda item. The next PROC meeting is scheduled for May 2nd, 2025. President Tu, would you like me to continue on to item B2, presentation and possible adoption of the proposed Peer Review Oversight Committee 2024 Annual Report?
Yes, please.
Great, thank you. Item 2 of my report is the proposed Peer Review Oversight Committee 2024 Annual Report. I would like to take this opportunity to thank my fellow PROC members for their dedication and hard work over the past year. The proposed 2024 PROC Annual Report includes information on various activities and accomplishments, information on the oversight functions performed by the PROC, and various statistical information. At its February 14, 2025 meeting, the PROC reviewed and approved the proposed PROC 2024 Annual Report. The PROC found that the California Peer Review Program met the requirements set forth by the CBA in 2024. The administrative site visit to CalCPA is the most comprehensive oversight activity that the PROC performs. PROC members Nick Peterson and Laura Ross attended the administrative site visit in 2024 and determined that CalCPA administered peer reviews in accordance with the standards adopted by the CBA. As part of the administrative site visit, PROC members asked CalCPA to provide information on peer reviewers who are performing a high volume of system reviews. CalCPA indicated that the large concentration of reviews performed by their high volume reviewers are consistent with the hours required to complete a peer review and not necessarily cause for concern. In conclusion, the PROC found that the California Peer Review Program is meeting the requirements set forth by the CBA. The PROC has 3 recommendations for future oversight, which are listed on page 25 of the annual report. The PROC recommends AICPA continue to monitor the California peer reviewer population to ensure that California firms have access to knowledgeable peer reviewers who have the capacity to perform a peer review in a timely manner. Second, AICPA update their facilitated state board access web application to require California licensed firms, including sole proprietors, to allow the CBA access to all available peer review related documentation and information consistent with the amendments to Business and Professions Code Section 5076 that became effective January 1, 2025. Third, continue monitoring the Pennsylvania Institute of CPAs, who are currently assisting CalCPA with open peer reviews by reviewing the AICPA oversight reports and ensuring that the Pennsylvania Institute of CPAs meeting the CBA's peer review requirements. The PROC recommends that the CBA adopt the proposed 2024 annual report and continue to provide guidance to the PROC concerning its oversight activities. I would like to turn discussion on this item back over to President Tu, and I'm happy to answer any questions members may have.
Thank you again for that report. Any comment or question from the board members? Any in Sacramento location? Seeing none, again, thank you for that very comprehensive report. And thanks for serving on the board committee.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, and I do need a motion from the board to accept the annual report. Motion by Ms. Dong and second by Ms. Hein. Any other further discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Reed, can you take a vote? Oh, public comment. I beg your pardon, Sacramento, any comment on the motion? Yeah, we still don't have anything from WebEx, so go ahead, Ms. Reed, take a vote.
Doug Aguilar,
Yes.
Patricia Batchelor,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Nancy Dong,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
Christian Lotta,
Yes.
Tony Lynn,
Yes.
Bruce Rafel,
Yes.
Joe Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Teresa Thompson,
Yes.
Yen Tu,
Yes.
and Evangeline Ward,
Yes.
and the motion carries.
You, Ms. Reed. All right, item number 6C is, there's no report on that one, so we're moving on to item 7, regulation. 7A is discussion and possible action to consider comments and amend California Code of Regulations, Title 16, Section 41, Firm Responsibilities, and Section 50.1, attest client notification regarding composition of firm ownership. And there's our presenter. Please continue.
Good afternoon, President Tu and members of the board. I am Diana Godinez, the regulatory specialist. The purpose of this agenda item is to ask the CBA to consider public comments received during the public comment period, consider and approve the staff recommended responses to the public comments, and decide whether or not to maintain the proposed regulatory text for California Code of Regulations sections 41 and 50.1 as originally noticed. The CBA approved and proposed changes to sections 41 and 50.1 after issues were identified regarding accounting firms providing attest services when the firm's ownership is comprised solely of CPAs who have completed only the general accounting experience. The proposed regulatory language would require accounting firms to provide attest services to disclose to peer reviewers that no owner is authorized to sign reports on attest engagements and include in their engagement letters for attest services a notification to the client of the name and license number of the CPA that the firm has authorized to sign the attest report on behalf of the accounting firm. The CBA has filed the necessary documents with the Office of Administrative Law, who published the notice of proposed changes in the California Regulatory Notice Register on January 10, 2025. The 45-day public comment period began on January 10, 2025 and concluded on February 24, 2025. A public hearing was held on February 26, 2025. As part of the completion of the rulemaking process, the CBA must consider all public comments received by either accepting or rejecting the comments. During the public comment period, the CBA received 6 written comments, which were also included with this agenda item. No comments were received during the public hearing. Staff's proposed responses intend to reject each comment. Staff has determined that the comments received were either outside the scope of the existing rulemaking proposal or warranted no changes to the proposed regulatory text. I would like to propose a modification to the CBA's proposed response to comment number 4, which is on top of page 10 of the agenda item. We would like to propose that the response instead state the CBA appreciates the commenters' support for this rulemaking proposal. The CBA rejects the commenter's suggestion as it is unrelated to the scope of this regulatory proposal. The original response was unclear, and the proposed change is more direct in reflecting that the comment is unrelated to the changes in sections 41 and 50.1. The written comments and the staff recommended responses including the revised one I just mentioned, will be included in the final statement of reasons. Staff recommends the CBA adopt the motion as follows. Adopt the staff recommended response to the comments, including the revised response I stated for comment number 4. Maintain the proposed regulatory text for California Code of Regulations Title 16, Sections 41 and 50.1 as originally noticed with no changes, and direct staff to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking proposal, including any necessary approvals from other state agencies, and authorize the executive officer to make any technical and non-substantive changes to the proposed regulations as necessary. That concludes my presentation. I will now turn the discussion back to President Chu for a possible motion, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Ms. Godinez. And, I'm very happy to accept a motion to staff's recommendation. You don't have to word everything. Any question or motion from the board members on this item? Mr. Rosenbaum?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the recommendation as listed by the presenter.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And second by Ms. Batchelor.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none. In Sacramento, anybody in our audience? Seeing none. Ms. Reed, please take a vote.
Evangeline Ward,
Yes.
Yen Tu,
Yes.
Teresa Thompson,
Yes.
Joe Rosenbaum, Bruce Rafel,
Yes.
Tony Lynn, Christian Lotta,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Nancy Dong,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Patricia Batchelor,
Yes.
and Doug Aguilera.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. I know it's already past 12 and we have one more item and we'll go to lunch after that because we have a time certain for next one. Thank you, Ms. Godinez. All right, item number 8, that would be me. Agenda item number 8 is the approval of the minutes. First, can I get a motion to adopt the minutes of January 23, 2005 of the CBA meeting, specifically agenda item 8A, which include non-substantive edits that were noted after the material were received. Mr. Rosenbaum?
So I move to adopt the January 23, 2025 CBA meeting minutes.
I'm still not used to saying 25. No. Ms. Hines? Good. Thank you for the motion and the second. Any further discussion from the board? See none. Anybody from Sacramento comments? See none. Ms. Reed, can you take a vote?
Doug Aguilera,
Yes.
Patricia Batchelor,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Nancy Dong,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines, Christian Lotta,
Yes.
abstain. Oh. Tony Lynn,
Yes.
Bruce Rafel,
Yes.
Joe Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Teresa Thompson,
Abstain.
Yen Tu,
Yes.
and Evangeline Ward.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Now we're going to go, can I get a motion to accept the committee meetings, specifically agenda item 8B through 8F, which include non-substantive edits that were noted after the material were received. Ms. Hine?
So moved.
Ms. Dong? Second? by Ms. Dong. So anybody have any discussion? Segmental location, any public comment? Seeing none, Ms. Reed, would you like to take a roll?
Evangeline Ward,
Yes.
Yan Tu, Teresa Thompson,
Abstain.
Joe Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Bruce Rayful,
Yes.
Tony Lynn,
Yes.
Christian Lotta,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines, Nancy Dong,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Patricia Batchelor,
Yes.
and Doug Aguilera. Motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. So now we're going to go for a lunch break, and we're going to come back at 1:30 because we have a time certain item, which is item number 4. And with that, we'll continue at 1:30. Thank you all. Everybody is here. Let's resume our meeting. Thank you again for being back. I am getting an echo. Am I good? Yes, I am. So we are now going to go back to our item 4 that we skipped before lunch. And item 4 is the report of the Secretary and Treasurer, Mr. Aguilar. 4A, overview of the of the budget process. And we have speakers, so you want to introduce the speaker?
Called in reinforcements and the heavy hitters here. And as I understand it, from the Department of Consumer Affairs Budget Office to present a overview of the budget process. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, board members. I am Sam Dyer, Fiscal Specialist with the DCA Budget Office, and I have with me Suzanne Balkas and Matt Nishamini. I'll be talking about how to navigate the budget process, the stages of the process, how budgets are built, and the role of the board. Next slide. We'll start with an introduction of our budget office at DCA. Then we'll overview the annual budget process, the methods for building your budget through incremental budgeting, and the fiscal responsibilities of the board. We'll close by answering any comments or questions that you have. Next slide. The Budget Office prepares and builds the annual budget for all of the programs at DCA. This includes facilitating communication between the boards and other agencies like the Department of Finance, Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency, and the legislature. It also includes maintaining and updating the board's financial statements and projections. Building the annual budget comes in 3 stages. Stage 1 is the development of the governor's budget, which releases on January 10th. Stage 2 is the spring process and the development of the Budget Act, which releases on June 15th. Stage 3 is the implementation of the Budget Act in the budget year. Next slide. This flow chart illustrates the 3 stages of the budget process. The fiscal year begins on July 1st. The Budget Act for the current year took effect on July 1st. In stage 1, from August to December, departments begin making adjustments to the enacted budget, making additions or subtractions. These can look like, for example, employee compensation adjustments, retirement rate adjustments, or budget change proposals. These adjustments made to the Budget Act are built into the governor's budget, which is released on January 10th. The governor's budget is accompanied by a budget bill. In stage 2, from February to June, the State Assembly and the State Senate consider what's been introduced in the governor's budget, and there begins a process for the legislature and the administration to negotiate the budget. This spring process is a period of hearings, negotiations, and meetings between lawmakers to consider what's included in the governor's budget and determine if it needs to be increased or decreased. It culminates in the May revision in the month of May. The governor's budget plus or minus the difference in the May revision is what we see in the enacted budget. By June 15th, the budget bill passes through the legislature to the governor, and upon signature becomes the Budget Act. Stage 3 is the implementation of the Budget Act in the budget year, beginning on July 1st. The Budget Act is what tells departments their appropriations, the levels within which they can spend during that year. The DCA Budget Office works with its boards to help them operate within their budgeted levels, track the condition of their funds, and project their condition into future years. Slide. The release of the governor's budget on January 10th to the legislature is required by the state constitution in Article 4, Section 12. The state constitution also requires that the legislature pass the budget bill to the governor by June 15th so that he can sign it into law. The approach that we use to build a budget is called incremental budgeting. This approach uses the current departmental level of funding as a base amount to be adjusted. The budget change proposal, or BCP, submitted to the Department of Finance has been the traditional decision document which proposes a change to an existing budget level. But there are multiple ways to go about changing the budget. The three main methods we will discuss are statewide budget letters, budget change proposals, and legislative changes. Statewide budget letters are budget adjustments issued statewide by the Department of Finance. There are certain budget letters that are issued yearly to every department, such as the salaries and wages drill, retirement rate adjustments, and the employee compensation adjustments. The Department of Finance can also issue other budget letters, such as those that reflect the priorities of the administration. Next slide. And I invite Suzanne, if you'd like, to talk about some of the budget letters from this year.
So, can you hear me? Okay. So there was two budget letters that impacted the board this year, and it is going to be shown in the May revise. And the first one is the vacancy savings and position elimination, which is budget letter 2420. So the Department of Finance issued a budget letter for a vacancy savings and position elimination to reduce the state workforce by 10,000 positions and $1.5 billion, which is $762 million from general fund and $738 million from special fund. The budget letter 2420 will be effective starting 2425 and ongoing, while the position elimination identified will become effective 2526 and ongoing. The next budget letter was the government efficiency reduction, budget letter 2424. The Department of Finance issued budget letter 2424, which is the government efficiencies reduction. And this budget letter provides instruction to implement the control section 4.05, which is the reduction required in the 2024 Budget Act for development of 25-26 governor's budgets.
Both of these budget letters are intended to reduce the cost to the state, but they are not effective yet as the administration has not fully made the decision yet until May. Next slide. The second method of incremental budgeting is the budget change proposal, or BCP. And a BCP requests additional resources, and resources can be money or they can be positions. These proposals are very data-driven. So to give a quick example, if the board has 4 staff who collectively can process 40 applications a year, and they are receiving 50 a year, they could submit a BCP to the Department of Finance for 1 more staff member, initiating a change to their budget. The Board of Accountancy submitted a BCP for 2 program technician 2s in the licensing unit to handle calls. And if approved through legislation, the BCP will be effective July 1st, 2025. Slide. The third method of incremental budgeting is a legislative change to the budget. After the governor's budget and budget bill roll out, the spring process happens. Items are heard by the legislature, who has the power to approve or to deny. Denying would equal a reduction in the governor's budget. They can also add items that did not originate within the department, and this would equal an increase in the governor's budget. Slide. And I invite Suzanne now to talk about fiscal responsibilities of the board.
Thank you, Sam. I will be going over the fiscal responsibilities. The board have to operate within its budget and cannot exceed appropriation. In addition, the board must comply with all of the restrictions and limitations set by the legislation. The budget office monitors the board's fund, expenditure, and revenue in a monthly basis and report it to the board. As a reminder, board members have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure the board maintains expenditure within their authorized appropriation. and can do so by reviewing the board's budget reports and expenditure projections on a routine basis. Next slide, please. So what is your budget? The board's budget, it is the amount that we have, that they get appropriated to spend during a specific fiscal year. Again, this amount changes every year. The budget office tracks the board's budget monthly by using projections, which is a tool used to monitor a board's expenditure and revenue throughout the fiscal year, and can assist the board in making financial decisions, while also ensuring the board keeps its expenses within their authorized appropriation. These reports are updated on a monthly basis and are regularly provided as an item in a board meeting. Budget reports provide board members with an opportunity to see how the board is expending its funds, with all expenses broken out into categories, such as personal services, which includes salaries and benefits. We have operation expenses, which is including the rent, equipment, and any enforcement costs, just that's to name a few of them. And we also track revenue and reimbursement to ensure we are on track of what was projected to bring in by the end of the fiscal year. We will communicate and work with the board if we have any issues or concern. Next slide, please. What you'll see in the expenditure document is the board's budget, how much the board spent in each line item, current year and prior year expenditure, what have been encumbered, and what we are projected to year end, and what is the remaining balance. Slide, please. So what's the relationship between your fund and your budget? Your budget is appropriated from your fund. It's similar to the check that you takes money from your checking account. The budget office monitors the board's fund using the fund condition. A fund condition is a document that provides an overview of the status of the board's special fund, and it displays multiple fiscal years and provide the board's past year expenditure actuals, current year authorized, and budget year estimated revenue, expenditure, and fund balance. We provide the fund condition for the board with the beginning balance, which is based on a prior year ending balance, and a prior year adjustment, which is any purchases or revenue that was made in this fiscal year for prior fiscal years. Revenue, which is going to be actuals for the prior year, projected for current year, and based either on a budget, governor's budget, or budget act for budget year and ongoing, depending on where we're at in the process. Expenditure is based on actuals in budget year, projection in current year, and governor's budget or budget act in budget year and budget year +1 is based on a 3% increase to accommodate for any increase that we have for GSI, which is based on the bargaining unit contracts. Next slide, please. So the fund balance and reserve, these are tools that we use to monitor and project the future health of the fund. And we determine if the fund balance is growing or declining. By using this tool, the board can determine when we need a fee increase, or if we have decline in the fund, or in some cases, if we need to lower the fee. And these are rare cases that we have, that the board fund balance is growing beyond statutory mandates. A commonly used metrics to monitor a fund health is months in reserve. This metric takes the ending funding balance for a specific fiscal year and compares it to the board's total authorized expenditure, providing the total months of a fund could sustain operating without collecting any revenue. For example, a fund with 12 months in reserve could sustain operation a full year without revenue being collected. Pursuant to the current law, the board may not have more than 24 months in reserve. Please let me know if you have any questions for us.
Any question from the board? Yes, Mr. Ria.
Thank you for your presentation. You mentioned in the course of the conversation that there was you were budgeting for a 3% increase. And what was that for?
So what we do in budget year is going to be based on what we have, whether it is the governor's budget or budget act, but budget year +1 is a 3% increase. We get bargaining unit contracts, they get 3% increases in GSIs. And so we try to accommodate for any increase that we're going to see, whether it is position-wise, salary-wise, or any contracts or anything. But it does not include enforcement.
So generally, the 3% is a personnel, it's a personnel item.
Yes.
So in the personnel item, I'm not quite sure of this, but most of the state staff are unionized. So there's a negotiation between
Yes.
the administration and the unions that come up with a number. What if the number exceeds 3%?
That's what we just put, because sometimes it can exceed 3% and sometimes it doesn't exceed 3%. And then there's other adjustments that associated with it. For example, there is some benefits, whether it is health and dental benefit or other adjustments that accommodate that. So we are not accounting for that. We just account for what we can, which is typically is the 3%.
So if there's a negotiation that is, say, it's 5%, you would build that into the budget, not limit it to 3%.
We just built 3%.
Hi, my name is Matt Nishamini. I'm also with the.
Sorry if this is my
No,
first
no.
meeting, so excuse me for this.
Right, so the governor's budget is a set amount based upon the incremental increases based upon the bargaining agreements. So those are real numbers. Those are real
numbers.
increases. So if it's 8%, we're building in 8%. If it's 3%, we're building in 3%. But what my colleague is referring to is out years, which are beyond, because we only budget out to the governor's budget. So governor's budget +1, we're not actually have official budgeting yet, but we're projecting 3%. And we're doing that primarily because most state staff are in the 3% range.
Got it. Thank you.
Historically, yeah.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. Anybody? Yes, Ms. Hine.
Hi, thank you. With the creation of the budget letters, the two that y'all referenced were general to the state. Are budget letters ever created that are targeted towards specific, agencies or departments, or, are generally our budget letters intended to be broader?
So generally there are broader because it is for all state departments and not specific for one. So if there is anything specific, that's going to be through the PCP if the board requested any positions.
So if I heard correctly, you may need to correct me. Those two general letters, it's not enforced at this point.
No, it is going to be in the May revise.
In the May revise. Yes. Any other questions, comments? Now I would like to open up to Sacramento audience. Seeing any comments? Seeing none, we still have nobody on WebEx. So thank you very much for the presentation. I appreciate you all coming to do the presentation.
Thank you for having us.
All right, thanks. All right, we are now going to item 4B, discussion of fiscal year 2024-25 mid-year financial statement. Mr. Aguilar.
A tough act to follow. Thank you, you guys. Provided for your review is the mid-year financial report for fiscal year 24 and 25 in your packet, 8 pages. And the CBA's budget authority is now set at $19,785,000. And this accounts for a reduction in employer retirement contributions, which was a budget letter, an increase in employee compensation, a different budget letter, for an overall net budget decrease of $70,000 from what was originally contained in the governor's report. The CBA's current budget will likely be adjusted further to reflect the elimination of 3 vacant positions and a cost efficiency reduction estimated at $32,000. Those are 2 more budget letters, just to bring the examples to our current situation here. And then if you turn to page 2, CBA revenues for the period of July 1 through December 31st, so 6 months, totaled $12,291,318, as reflected in the table on page 2 of the report. There was a minor typo in the narrative showing the total revenue off by $1. Projected revenues are anticipated to exceed $21.6 million by the end of the fiscal year. The fiscal 6-month financial statement located on page 3 reflects actual expenditures as of December 31st, 2024, which totaled 9.8 million. So there's three columns there. The budget, the first 6 months that we're talking about, and at the bottom of that first 6 months is the 9.8 million. And then the last column is a projected 12 months. The fiscal 6 month, let's see, the CBA is currently projected to end the fiscal year with a budget surplus of 6.9%. So the budget is 19.8 million in round numbers. It's projected to be, our actual expenditures are projected to be 18.4 million in round numbers. Page 4 contains a new table in response to CBA request for additional information on comparing current and prior year fiscal year spending. So comparing 6 months from the prior and our current 6 months. The information reflects an overall increase of 4.1% in spending when compared to the period last fiscal year. And then for your information, on pages 5 through 7 are descriptions of individual line items. And last, the fund condition statement, I think of as the balance sheet, on page 8 reflects increased revenue from the fee increase that took effect this fiscal year and projected revenue for the next fee increase that will occur in fiscal year 26 and 27. The additional revenues are having a positive impact on CBA's fund balance and months in reserve total. So if you look at the actuals from last year in the first column at the very bottom, we had a fund balance of 21.1 million. And then if you go to the top of the next column, which is the current year, you see that 21.1 million. And then there's a projected ending fund balance at the bottom of that column of 23.7 million in round numbers, which represents 13.4 months of expenditures. So without any additional revenue, we could operate for 13 months, and it grows from there. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer, or more likely than not, have staff answer any questions members may have.
Thank you, Mr. Aguilar. Ms. Hines.
I like to think of you as a facilitator of the discussion. How about
Yes.
that? I just had a question about whether the strategic plan may have some costs associated with this, more for staff. Do you anticipate that the strategic plan with the goals that have been stated might have some costs associated with implementation, with some of the advancements and digital tools that we're talking about? And, you know, are there anything that should be on our radar that we should be thinking about?
Ms. Pierce, you have the.
Yes, absolutely. Some of the different tools you were talking about for our, customer service, some of the things that we explored there. Probably the biggest one in our strategic plan that I can think of is in our business modernization area. The CBA Connect platform, as we continue to build that out, that will probably be the largest in terms of expenditure that I can think of as we move forward. So that's something that we, even outside of the strategic plan, have been thinking about and budgeting for current and future years. But that will definitely probably be the biggest one I can think of. Timing on that. We currently have a contract for our business modernization services. It's a 3-year contract, split up, $300,000 to $400,000 a year. So we'll probably enter into something similar, probably a 3 to 4-ish year contract chunk at a time. And in terms of a guesstimate on cost, I know it'll be more than the contract we have now because prices have gone up. So I could give you a guess, but it really would just be a guess. Our current contract for 3 fiscal years was 1.3 million, give or take. So the next contract, I'd say we're looking at probably about the same, if not more. just because of hourly rates have increased since we entered into the current agreement. So that'll be something that we look at as we move forward and make some decisions about whether or not we need to go in for a budget change proposal to increase our budget, or whether or not we have enough existing funding in our authorized budget to pay for it. So that's something that we work with Dominic on, Department of Consumer Affairs, budget staff, leadership.
Right. I have a question. I'm trying to recall if earlier we talked about the lease for this space here, and I remember a couple of years ago we talked about moving back to the office in DC. Thank you. Can you give us a update on what's transpired and just remind us what's happening?
Sure. So going back in time, about 18 months, we were in a work environment where most staff were working remote. And we had quite a bit of space here that was not being used. And so we had been working towards a project to downsize our office space and actually move out of this location over to the Department of Consumer Affairs headquarters office. It was a smaller space, but would meet the needs at that time based on the current work environment where we had staff teleworking, primarily teleworking. And then shortly after we started exploring that, there was discussion and then eventually an executive order that required staff to return to office 2 days a week. And under that executive order, that new space that we were exploring wouldn't fit us. So we decided to stay put, and we began working on renegotiating the lease here. And so we've been actually working on that. The lease was just signed recently. We just got that finalized. And we've been working, as Christy mentioned, on tenant improvements here. We have enough space for all the staff and all that, just kind of other tenant improvements that we've been working on. And I believe for the May board meeting, we'll be bringing back costs on the lease. We're saving some money, so we got some price reductions. We eliminated some parts from the lease where it's what's the term I want to use, where it increases based on the price index? Yes, thank you. Sorry, the CPI, I believe that was removed from the current lease where it was part of the prior lease. So we had some unknown future costs. So we definitely have some cost savings underneath the new lease that we're entering into. And if I recall correctly, it's a 4-year hard lease and then I think a 4-year soft lease after that. So, so in a nutshell, that's.
Yeah, so basically the saving between that, because I remember at the time the move was going to save us some money in terms of connection to our budget, and this one, it's about the same amount, or?
I'm going to say no.
Less?
Yeah, it's definitely savings over what we were paying under the prior lease, but it's not saving as much as it would be. But we also have a lot more space here, a conference room, that kind of thing. So we're occupying more square footage than we were at the other place, but there is savings beyond what we're currently paying.
All right, thank you for that reminder. And I think any other board member have any questions, comments? Seeing none. Anybody from Sacramento audience? Seeing none. It's not a Mr. Aguilar. Can we close that item now?
Yes.
Well, you just done a great job. I thought you might want to continue. All right. Moving on to the next item, which is item number 9, other business. 9A is American Institute of Certified Public Accountancy. And on the number 1 is report on meeting of the American Institute of Public Certification, Certified Public Accountants, attended by our representative, which is Mr. Corrigan.
Thank you, President Chu. Yes, I attended the virtual meeting of the State Board Committee, and that was on February 19th. And of course, we did all the administrative types of matters and procedures, reviewed minutes, et cetera, from the October 8th meeting. Moving on, each jurisdiction represented, and there are maybe 13 members or so, I don't remember, spoke about hot topics in their jurisdiction. And of course, I spoke about Assembly Bill 1175. We had a rather robust, though it's tending to calm down over time, regarding substantial equivalency and mobility types of topics, because we know different jurisdictions have different ideas and are taking different actions. Another interesting discussion was whether candidates can actually pass the exam with only 120 versus 150 hours. Some feeling that candidates may not be ready to take the exam, and others saying, why, yes, they certainly are. Some of us did it. But so differences of opinion and the values of, candidates getting their bachelor's and their experience and everything else, and actually being ready and passing that exam. So it was very interesting. We got an update, of course, on the exam operations, pass rates, and sittings. They've added openings to accommodate the credit extension period that we know about. So that kind of opens it up and allows candidates to kind of get in. They're continuing to work on their cloud drive project that I previously mentioned to become even more automated, efficient, that sort of thing. They are expanding candidate communications via emails, et cetera, to kind of stay in touch with candidates, reminding them about sitting for the exam, and also score release dates, that sort of thing. So really enhancing communications. They are working on improving the timing of score reporting, which candidates, of course, are delighted about that, anxious to get their scores and how to proceed further. Another interesting thing is that NASBA hired a candidate data analyst to analyze the licensing data, how to improve the volume of exam takers, understanding the trend of exam takers, that sort of thing. The volume of exam takers is kind of lower, but they're seeing kind of an uptrend to that. So that's good to hear about. That concludes my report, and I turn it back to you, Ms. Tu.
Thank you very much, Ms. Corrigan. All right. Any questions from the board? Any from the audience in Sacramento? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is 9B, the NASBA's reporting out on activities and meetings and so forth. And our first item is the Enforcement Resource Committee. Mr. Aguilar, you're up on that again.
Yeah, I can handle this one. We have not met in between meetings. There's no report.
Oh, good job. That was very well done. All right. Item 1B, continuing professional education. I need to take my glasses off. Continuing Professional Education Committee, Ms. Batchelor.
Thank you, Ms. Tu. I'm not as lucky as you, so here we go. We had a kickoff. I'm with the CPE committee, and that's the Continuing Professional Education Committee. We had our kickoff on 12/9/2024, and the committee was charged with promoting and developing uniform rules and requirements for CPE amongst jurisdictions. Jurisdictions meaning, all states. And then we also oversee the standards for CPE programs and the related CPE standards working groups. So we were developed as a working group in terms of, a working group was developed to look at the 2024 CPE Standard Review Project. And what that is every 2 years, the working group takes a look at the standards and how they are to see what type of updates or changes that need to be made. And it was determined that in those reviewing of those standards, a holistically change needed to be made with the advancements in technology and the transformative impacts of AI and other innovations and learnings that seem to be blurring the lines of instructional delivery and the methods that are currently in place. And so a task force was formed in April of 2024, and with this working group, they submitted recommendations to our committee to take a look at and for our approval. And so with those, we enacted was an expense exposure draft, which has explanatory language in it, based on recommendations, and then new statements on standards for CPE program. And with those new statements, that's incorporating technology, AI, and so forth. And then it was a red line 2024, the 2024 report was redlined with the new versions that were suggested. And so then we met again on January 27th of this year, and we also met on February 11th because we had a lot of work to do in terms of, redlining and reviewing, because the report is pretty significant, it's quite large. And so it's now comprised of 7 principles, and these 7 principles are, and this to make the report is more reader friendly, because the way it was before, it wasn't very effective, especially for the vendors to take a look at it, because the vendors that want to give CPE courses are some of the main principles that have to make sure that they're up to standard based on our requirements. So these 7 principles are the learning objectives that they have to be up to date on, quality of the CPE programs, participant engagement, CPE program completion and verification. And the 5th principle is CPE program measurement. Number 6 is the participants' communication. So they like feedback from participants such as myself that are taking these courses. And then number 7 is the required documentation for the CPE programs. So to document the progress. And so, like I said, the readability was improved, and there's not an effective date yet, because now with our input and what we suggested back to that working group, now it has to go through AICPA and NASBA, and those committees have to look at it. And then the AICPA and NASBA Board of Directors will finally sign off on what we recommended. Or they may kick it back to us and say, we want some tweaking or some changes or something like that. But as of now, that's about where we are right now. Nothing's finalized. They're trying, I think NASBA is planning to meet sometime in April. So we have our chairman and our vice chairman is planning on attending that NASBA meeting along with one of the committee members. And so they said in time they're going to choose a member. They haven't gotten back to us or sent an email and say which one of us was chosen to go and do a presentation on that, but we'll see. But we're trying to make it for that April 2025 deadline. So that's the end of my report. And if there's any questions, I'm free, feel free.
Thank you for that report. Any questions? Yes, Ms. Hine.
I'm not sure if I can bring this up because this is something that came up in the CPC meeting. So we haven't brought it to the committee yet, but it's in the materials. I'm looking at council just to make sure I can ask this question or if I need to wait till later. Because what I want to ask is whether or not the discussion that we're having and considering about continuing education courses that's being presented from the CPC, whether that work has any bearing or relevance to the work that you're doing with NASBA, where you're looking at, at continuing education being consistent across jurisdictions.
Right. Well, with ours, we're actually working on updating. And so for the 2024 that was presented to us, we saw the need that it needed to be updated. And so therefore, and especially with AI, most of the technology part is what, ChatGPT, all that, that's what enacted us to get this particular project going. Now, how that also relates to what we were talking about today, I think eventually in time that will catch up with it. And, but we have to get approved first. If I answered your question.
We meaning NASBA?
We meaning the CPE committee and NASBA. Right.
The CBA, our board should anticipate that there will come some recommendations for additional continuing education that we should be thinking about approving for or considering for our licensees. Is that
That is
what I'm
exactly
hearing?
correct.
Okay, all right.
Yes, and like I said, the vendors are the main, piece of the puzzle because they're the ones that have to do, they're providing the courses for for everyone, for licensees and different things.
I'm asking this question because if licensees are out, professionals are out there using materials that there's not a consistent expectation of usage, and we also are not, there's not a consistent expectation of usage, then what is our responsibility as a board, as an agency, to be monitoring the usage of AI? I mean, it feels like we are playing some catch up in trying to understand, not just ethically, but professionally, how it should be used, how it, how it works, how it doesn't work. And I've asked this question before about, our board getting some more information directly about the usage of AI in the industry so that we can be informed about what would be acceptable. And, so
Right.
that's what part of why I'm digging at this a little bit more, exploring.
Right, and I understand what you mean. Just like when earlier today in our discussion, we were talking about the soft skills, like language, learning a new language or anything like that. And in my mind, it's just clicked to me since you asked this question, where, who are the providers for that? How will CPE be counted? How many, in terms of hours and different things like that. So it's still a working process, and so it's a huge report, and we made our recommendations, and we'll just have to see how that fallout is going to be. And then however it is, then that's when I'm sure is probably going to be presented to this board.
And Ms. Hine, Mr. Gonzalez would like to add to this comment.
Thank you. So one piece just to level set a bit is the CPE standards, as Ms. Batchelor was talking about, are really driven towards the providers of CE, whereas our rules are focused on the licensee selecting appropriate CE. So we don't use the NASBA registry necessarily for approved providers, but it is a good benchmark for a lot of things that we do that we put into our own regulations. When we launched this exercise and worked with leadership and former President Rosenbaum on the CE changes that you're kind of taking in chunks along the way, we've been in contact with NASBA from the beginning, recognizing they were undertaking this exercise. We've been engaging with them back and forth on what they're working on and how ours is either consistent with or things we should be looking at or things we're asking them to look at, so that this kind of collaboration is happening. The AI component is one of those elements that this board will be looking at, not so much specific about AI, but if there's CE that's AI driven, what some of the rules and requirements should be around that, trying to be thoughtful about those modalities in the future. And so I think what our requirements are doing, and what I believe the CPE standards are trying to do, is get away so much from the specific modalities, but more about the quality of the CE. And because that's something that's more that you can handle a little bit, because we've gone from live and self-study to group internet-based to nano learning to asynchronous and synchronous. So they keep adding these modalities, and AI is going to be something in there. So they're moving towards quality-based CE. And so we're definitely engaged in those discussions. And we've actually seen the strike through an underlying version of what's been going on and trying to adapt as we are moving this project forward with this board.
Thank you for that comment. And also, I just want to add on to the fact that in January, when the current year board leadership met with the staff, that's one of the priority that was listed that we will work on this year. So your questions and comments are very tropical. Ms. Nancy Corrigan.
Yes, having served on the CPE committee a while ago, a few years ago, whatever, on NASBA, I just want to comment that It is largely CPE provider driven. And to address a little bit of Ms. Hines' comment, the providers have to qualify and they are regularly reviewed, and it's pretty stringent. And to fall off of that list of providers is a really big deal for them. So if they're not meeting something, you know, if the content, the hours, and how all of the credits are measured, all kinds of things are not met, they fall off the list until they requalify and get back on the list. And that directly affects their revenue, their ability to offer the courses, that sort of thing. So there is a really high standard and a real consistency between them. I can't just go out and take some course and hope I get credit. Pardon me, I'm losing my voice. But I have to make sure that there is a qualifying or registry number or whatever they call it, that they are on that list so that when I renew my license, I get credit for that. So there are many controls in place, and the committee is excellent. There are layers of reporting. That committee looks at it, goes to the next one, the AICP and NASBR involved. So there's quite a process involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, the next item is actually would be me reporting out on legislative support committee. We met on February 26th, and majority of the conversation was on staff presenting the different states that are dealing with the mobility and the whole licensing question. You have it's very funny. I was going to save this chart that they have with the United States map and then the different state that are doing different things, but I said that would confuse everybody like nothing else. So automation, basically there are discussion and states that are doing from automation mobility tied to license in good standing to pathway legislation with no automated mobility. Some of the legislation that's happening around the country is some state have legislation to remove reference to the 150 semester hours, to remove reference to 150 hours, but added a bachelor plus 30 hours pathways to our legislation. At the time in February, we didn't actually have a bill yet, but now we have to adding a bachelor with 2-year experience and of course passing the CPA license. In September and November, we had a lot of those discussion already, so I won't bore you with the similar discussion that was at this committee. And to be continued this year, you can imagine there will be a lot of state legislation that is going to go past, and I will report back to you all as things become clearer and so forth, and I'll keep you posted. Any question for either Ms. Batchelor or myself on the committee? All right, I'm going to take both of this item with the public. Anybody from Sacramento want to comment? Seeing none, we are then able to move to our next. Ms. Corrigan, you do not have a report, but do you want to say anything?
No meeting, so no report. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Item number 10, report on Committee on Professional Conduct Legislative Committee and Enforcement Program. 10A will be Committee on Professional Conduct. Mr. Aguilar.
Thank you, President Tu. The Committee on Professional Conduct discussed a possible policy change regarding the CBA's retired status requirement, which could be included in a future rulemaking package. Since the retired status option was implemented in 2014, staff has received frequent requests from licensees to remove the requirement that a licensee holds an active license for 5 years in California to qualify for retired status. Staff reports this is the most common reason a licensee is unable to meet the retired status requirements in California. Staff asked the CPC to approve the removal of the 5-year active requirement for retired status for inclusion in a future rulemaking package. The CBC agreed with the recommendations as outlined in the agenda item, noting that the change does not affect consumer protection. The CBC recommends that the CBA direct staff to move forward with the proposed policy changes for retired status as recommended by staff in the agenda item. This is a fully formed motion and a second is not needed.
Thank you, Mr. Aguilar. We have a motion on the floor. Any questions or comment from the board members? Seeing none, I would invite the public from Sacramento. And seeing none, so please, Ms. Reed, can you take a roll?
Doug Aguilar,
Yes.
Patricia Batchelor, Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Nancy Dawn,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines, Christian Lotta,
Yes.
Tony Lynn,
Yes.
Bruce Rafel,
Yes.
Joe Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Teresa Thompson,
Yes.
Yen Tu,
Yes.
and Evangeline Ward,
Yes.
and the motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. All right, item 10B, Legislative Committee, Ms. Thompson.
There's a second item.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I beg your pardon.
Staff was really busy this time. Well, as usual, I should say. CPC item 4, CBA item 10A2, now transitioning to the discussion to possibly approve a policy change related to the continuing education subject areas, which also could be included in a future rulemaking package. A CE work group consisting of 2 board members was formed in March 2024 at the March 2024 CBA meeting and has met on 3 occasions since to discuss various CE regulation topics. The CE work group reviewed various subject areas, including non-technical, technical, ethics, government accounting, accounting and auditing, or A&A for short, preparation engagements, and fraud. The CE work group recommended the following changes. Allow sexual harassment and workplace violence prevention, workplace stress management, employee wellness, and world languages to count towards non-technical CE. The next item is to remove the restriction on foreign language education as non-technical CE, recognizing that learning a world language supports diversity, equity, inclusion, and professional competence. The third item, rename the specialized industry and industry accounting subject areas to specialized industry knowledge. Fourth, permit excess fraud courses to count towards the A&A CE requirement. And last, remove the 24-hour governmental auditing CE requirement while still requiring licensees performing work under GAGAS to complete 4 hours of fraud CE. The CPC was in agreement with the CE work group recommendations. The CPC recommends that the CBA direct staff to move forward with the proposed policy changes as recommended by the CE work group and included in the agenda item. This is a fully formed motion and a second is not needed. That concludes my report and I'll return it back to President Tu.
Thank you, Mr. Aguilar. Yes, Ms. Thompson.
I have a practical question, and this might be for staff, but should this pass, does that mean that the required sexual harassment and like security awareness trainings we take through DCA would be CPE eligible?
I was hoping
Good
that was the
question.
case, but I think that's still being developed, right?
Okay.
Still.
Very good question.
How could we do that?
That course would probably have to meet standards that we were talking about earlier for delivery and content. But that would be nice, huh?
You want to jump in?
I can't say definitively yes or no, but my guess is more likely than not, because they're not designed to be continuing education, similar to what would be required in our regulations.
Yeah, and the audience is a little different too, I think, maybe possibly. Anyway, but very good question, though, Ms. Thompson. Good try, good try. All right, we're moving on to item, we need a motion. We already have a motion. You have Lada? Comment? Ms. Hines?
Comment that the ethics, the DCA does, the DCA, I don't know if it's the DCA or maybe it's because it's presented by the DOJ, but the ethics does count towards continuing legal education. So I don't know if there's a, a correlation there potentially, but just offering it up.
I think staff should look into it for the board members that are interested to know. Yes. Ms. Lada?
Thank you, President Tu. I understand we have a fully formed motion on the table, but a thought came to mind throughout our discussion today. So in regards to removing the 24 units of government accounting and audit CE, I was curious if we're concerned if removing that requirement will inadvertently increase the probability of licensees having more citations. Similar to earlier today, we had reporting that about 94% of our citations were related to the 2012 requirement. So by removing that government accounting units, could we potentially create more instances like that, but related to the government units, or are we not concerned about that?
I'm not concerned about it, partly because it's removing a requirement instead of adding to. And then in all honesty, if the way we've looked at it is that 24 units of government accounting is actually, like I said, embedded in the GAGIS and Yellow Book. And if you violate that, that's actually a violation of professional standards, which would likely not warrant a citation. It would probably come more in the form of discipline.
Okay, I guess I was thinking that having it be a part of the requirements kind of gives the CPAs like more visibility to track it, like within their normal CE providing platforms. And so if we remove it, it kind of might make it a little bit harder for them to keep up with it. And if they don't do it, they are still violating our standards. So I was just thinking from a practical standpoint, having the requirement gives them more visibility and tools to stay in compliance. So that was just my only thought.
Sounds like Dominic is saying that it's embedded, those requirement that they need. So, but noted, yeah. Anybody else have any comments? Otherwise, I will go to the public in Sacramento for comments, and seeing none. Ms. Reed, can you take a vote?
Evangeline Ward,
Yes.
Yen Tu, Teresa Thompson,
Yes.
Joe Rosenbaum,
Yes.
Bruce Rayful,
Yes.
Tony Lynn, Christian Lotta,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Nancy Dong,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Patricia Batchelor,
Yes.
and Doug Aguilar.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Now, Mr. Aguilar, are you finished? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. That's on me, actually. So 10B, Legislative Committee, Ms. Thompson.
Thank you. The first item discussed, the Legislative Committee discussed this morning, was the legislative tracking chart, legislative calendar, and considerations for positions on legislation, which was a written report. There was no action on this item, and this is CBA item 10B1 in the package. Additionally, staff presented an update on Assembly Bill 1175, which was introduced by Assemblymember Jackie Irwin on February 21st. This bill contains language from the CBA to enhance the requirements to qualify for the Uniform CPA exam and obtain CPA licensure and modernize mobility requirements that enable out-of-state licensees to practice in California. After the bill's introduction, staff identified minor amendments that are needed to align the bill language more closely to what the CBA previously reviewed and approved. A new amendment that staff would like to propose for inclusion in the bill provides authority for the CBA to establish regulations to accept board recognized certificate and training programs as a substitute for a portion of the experience requirement. This amendment would clarify that the board has discretion in the implementation of CBA recognition of This amendment would clarify that the board has discretion in the implementation of CBA recognition of certificates and training programs. Additionally, the proposed amendment would limit an applicant to using either the certificate or training program or an advanced degree in an accounting-related subject to substitute for a portion of the 2-year experience requirement, ensuring applicants cannot completely substitute this requirement. The bill is currently in the Assembly Business and Professions Committee and is set for hearing on April 8th. Staff will be coordinating with CBA leadership to identify a member to participate in the committee hearing. The LC recommends that the CBA authorize the executive officer to work with President 2 and the author's office to propose amendments to AB 1175 consistent with those identified in the analysis. This is a fully formed motion and does not require a second. I will turn it back to President 2 for discussion.
Any discussion from the board? Seeing none. Any from Sacramento audience? Seeing none. Ms. Reed, can you take a vote?
Doug Aguilera, Patricia Batchelor,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Nancy Dong,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Christian Lauda,
Yes.
Tony Lynn,
Yes.
Bruce Rayful.
Yes.
Joe Rosenbaum.
Yes.
Teresa Thompson. Yen Tu.
Yes.
And Evangeline Ward.
Yes.
And the motion carries.
All right, Ms. Thompson, do you have
One more.
continue?
The final item on the Legislative Committee agenda was the review and consideration of possible positions on legislation the California Board of Accountancy is monitoring. There are 9 bills currently being monitored by staff. Several bills have been introduced this session as placeholder or spot bills. If any of these bills are amended in a manner that makes it relevant to the CBA, an analysis will be conducted by staff and presented to the CBA at a future meeting. Staff did note a couple of issue areas that may take greater importance later in this session, which include charter school audits and artificial intelligence auditors. There was no action taken on this item, and that concludes my report.
Ms. Thompson. And now we are going to item C, which is Enforcement Program Oversight Committee. Ms. Dong.
Thank you. So staff
Oh,
provided.
hold on. Ms. Dong, I forgot to say, please, any more board comment? Seeing none. Public comment in Sacramento? Seeing none. Now the item is over, and Ms. Dong, you can continue.
Yeah, so we're returning to item 10C. Staff presented some really helpful information about supervised practice for probationers this morning, and I think it's going to be useful for us as we move into discussions about stipulated settlements later on in this agenda. Staff presented an overview on the use of supervised practice as a term of probation. They noted that the topic is being presented as there has been an increased use of this term when a license is granted through a petition for reinstatement. Following an overview of supervised practice as an optional term of probation, staff outlined the role and qualifications of what is called a practice monitor, also known as a monitor, the process for selecting a monitor, and the use of the monitor's reports in the probation process. Prior to the EPOC meeting, members provided suggestions to improve the documents used to monitor this process. These include adding a statement for the practice monitor to affirm that A, there is no personal professional relationship with a probationer, and B, adding a statement notifying that both parties that the probationer shall pay all costs for any such monitoring. Additionally, based on member feedback, staff will explore including information either on the plan of practice or in a discussion during the probation orientation regarding the probationer's responsibility to take steps to ensure confidentiality with information that is provided to the monitor. Moreover, staff highlighted several considerations to add clarifying information when CBA members include the term as a condition for the reinstatement of a license, such as targeting a specific practice area requiring supervision, the number and frequency of engagements for review, and whether the review should occur pre or post issuance. The EPOC took no action on this item, and that concludes my report.
Thank you for that report. Any comments from the board? Seeing none. Any comment from the audience in Sacramento? Seeing none. All right, thank you for that. We are now moving on to item number 11A, and that item is for future California Board of Accountancy meeting. Are there any agenda item from member of the board that you might want to suggest for future board meetings? Seeing none. Anybody from the Sacramento audience? Seeing none, we are then moving on to item number 12, which is our closed session pursuant of Government Code Section 111, wait, 11126E. Do I need to read that? No. Okay, in that case, we're going to item closed session. All right. At this time, we will be moving closed session to deliberate on closed session matter. Once closed session is complete, CPA will adjourn. For those who are interested, you don't have to come back if you don't have any business with closed session. You know, it's a lovely idea. Why don't we take a 5-minute bio break and be back? Yeah, 2:40.